Hello. We're gonna see if anyone's actually gonna join in today. Welcome to the first person who just joined in. Today is gonna be a short stream because first of all, because I have drank 2 cans of Monster Energies in the past 3 hours. So I'm a little, how shall we say, I'm not calm, but I'm as you can tell, I have minimal ability to use my words. Goodbye to whoever just left. And besides minimal ability to use my words, I have also desperately need to write an essay of mine because I promised to do a movie night tonight with Chris, and my essay is not written, and it's due tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. But while I have like a full topic and everything ready to go, like I have an argument. It is a very good argument. Really, what I'm going to be writing about is about. I'm going to be arguing that intrastate nationalism, so internal state nationalism, is. Well, really, what I'm going to be doing is doing a comparative analysis of intrastate nationalism in Spain and in Great Britain, and make the argument that the reason why we have such strong intrastate nationalism in Spain, where both Catalan and Basque country are both vying for independence, while in Great Britain we have, Cornwall and where is Welsh from? I think it's like Wales. It's Wales. So we have both like Cornwall and Wales and Scotland, none of which are truly like fighting for independence like we see in Spain with Basque and Catalan. And so I'm going to make the argument that the reason why this is happening is because in England we have first of all a much stronger in-group out-group rhetoric coming from the government. So we have a very strong, historically a very strong English versus other rhetoric, especially given the whole colonial empire up until like the 1950s. And the fact that most of England is still in fact racist. So in England, and because of the large numbers of immigration into England of non-white persons, we have a much stronger in-group rhetoric coming from both the government and like in general the local about England and the Great Britain as like a white England, white Great Britain. While on the other hand, in Spain, we see less of that. They have a more homogenous population, as far as I can tell, and as far as the censuses that I'm like digging up are showing, and have historically had much more of a homogenous population in terms of skin color and race. And as a result, that leads to other cleavages within the population, specifically language-based, which is what part of the like nationalizing rhetoric of both Basque County and Catalan they are both arguing that they should have independence because they have their own independent language. And actually, very interesting fact is the fact that Basque is one of like the only language with it's the only language in the entire language family. So Basque is in no functional way affiliated with its like grammar structure and like its pronunciation and like the whole way the language is oriented. It's no way affiliated with like any Proto-Indo-European languages. So, which is fascinating because it means that it's probably left over from the original languages spoken in Europe before the invasion of Proto-Indo-European, so Proto-European languages, which is going to be everything else that Europe speaks is currently an Indo-European language. Fascinating stuff. And so part of the reason why Great Britain doesn't have this as a strong nationalizing rhetoric is what I'm going to at least argue is the fact that Scotland, which came super close to actually demanding independence from Great Britain, or more accurately, United Kingdom, is actually separated linguistically. You have Scots, which is a descendant of Old English, which is a Germanic, Germanic language, and then you have Scottish Gaelic, which is a Celtic language, and has been descended from when the Celts invaded, when Irish descendants, the Celts from Ireland, invaded northern Scotland, but the original language that was in the Scottish area in Scotland, while we still had Britannic languages in Britain, was actually Pictish, and Pictish is no more. No current language spoken in Scotland is descended from one Pictish thing, and so really Scotland is divided, both linguistically and also in the fact that they don't have a single heritage in a language, which I think is fascinating. And both of their languages come from invaders. So, and I think that's why we don't have a strong. And so the same thing goes for Cornish and Welsh, is that both of those are also Celtic languages rather than Britannic languages. And while both are descended from Old Britannic, they also have enough Old English mixed in for them not to be truly linguistically different, which is fascinating. I've been digging up a lot about languages because a lot of the interstate and national movements are centered around language and the politics of languages, as I learned a while back. This is all for an essay that's due tomorrow at 3:30 p.m., of which I have a seventh written. One whole seventh, 500 words out of 3,500 words. So yeah, today's gonna be a short stream, possibly, maybe. If more than one person ever gets on, I don't even know who is watching. Where is everyone? It's fine. You know what? I'm gonna talk. I'm gonna put this up on the deep web, and then not deep web. This isn't the deep web. This is absolutely. I'm gonna put this up on YouTube, and then I'm gonna go and hopefully write my essay, because Movie Nights has just been canceled because I am a dumbass who doesn't actively lie to people, which I guess is a good thing. I guess, but okay, so. Really, the thing that I really wanted to talk about today was, so if you're bilingual, like a truly bilingual, like you can think objectively in both languages, or in two or more languages, you probably have come across this exact phenomenon. Even if you're like very, very well versed in another language, that I stumbled upon this Friday, where as most of you know, I speak both Russian. I'm fluent in both Russian and English, and the result of this is that I don't particularly think in a specific language. I think in something much closer to abstracts that don't really exist in either Russian or English. But get translated. So this abstract concept gets then translated into English or Russian, depending on which language I want to speak. Which makes my life a lot easier, because if I thought in a single language, then I'd have to like always translate instead of immediately go to the word. But separate thing is that, but my English is a lot stronger in terms of vocabulary and nuances, because again, I moved to the US when I was 7, and I've had almost all of my formal education has been in English. But I am actively learning. I'm actively relearning Russian and trying to read literature and learn the grammar and all that other fun stuff, and practice speaking Russian as well. As being without, at least some functional Russian community is very difficult, especially because one of the main issues of learning a language is the fact that you don't get enough speaking practice. But back to the issue at hand is the fact that I have Russian lessons, and they're at 10 a.m. on Friday mornings. And my lovely Russian tutor, who is in Moscow, gave me an assignment last week, due this Friday, or this past Friday, to write a short text about what I'm doing during quarantine. So what am I up to during quarantine, which is good, very, very interesting. I'm not gonna lie. And so I sat down hour before my lesson, as I usually do, to do my homework, and inspiration just struck me. And I wrote a full 3 pages of this text in Russian about just the Gothic of sitting at home all the time, and how like abstract sitting at home all the time is, and how there's no real sense of time because I don't have a clock up, because we have computers and phones, and I have my Google that listens to everything that I say, my Google Home that listens to everything that I say, that I ask the time if I need to know the time. But so because of the lack of a constant physical presence of time, like a ticking clock, it's near impossible to measure time or have a true concept of time, given that I have maybe 1 scheduled thing a day at most. Really, I have 4 scheduled things a week, and the result is that I have no real concept of day-to-day existence besides. And so there's time both feels infinite and always passing, because it's the same thing of you wake up, you do the same exact thing, you stay indoors, or you take a walk, or you do some homework, or in my case, I play Animal Crossing, I knit some, I watch a couple of episodes of something, I eat some snacks, go into town, pick up my groceries, go back, come back, right? It's the same monotonous thing over and over and over and over again, right? It's week 7 of quarantine. We're starting week 8, and it doesn't feel like 8 weeks has passed, but also it absolutely feels like 8 weeks have passed. And it feels like it's been forever since I've gone out and sat at a restaurant, because it's been a whole 8 weeks. And so I tried to write this text, and it by tried, I did write this text. And when I presented it to my Russian tutor, we read it out loud together, and we spent the entire hour deconstructing it and talking about my grammar and what word usage that I use and other things like that. And he asked me, and actually he was really impressed by it, which I'm very proud of myself. And he asked me if I write in English, and specifically if I write nonfiction texts in English, referring not to the essays that I rant about and the essay, not academic texts, but blog posts and poetry, and not nonfiction like that. And I said no, because I don't feel it the same way in English. But inspiration struck me in Russian, and he said that it's much more likely that I could write a really powerful text about just the Gothic of sitting at home and having your calendar be 6 days, and you're having your desk calendar be 3 days out of date, and about the half-empty bottle of white wine on your table that hasn't moved in 4 days either. and I could write a much more powerful text just because I have a much stronger grasp of English and a much stronger grasp of like the nuances of the English language and how to like mix words together to get that vibe to like artistically show and convey the feeling that I want to. But the difficulty is that inspiration struck to me specifically in Russian. Like I sat down to write a text in Russian and I wrote it in Russian. And when I attempted to translate it after my lesson, because, my tutor is a writer and a fairly popular one, and many people read the text that he write. And if he said it was good, that it was probably quite good. And I tried to translate it into Russian and into English to convey that same sense, and it was flat out impossible for me to. It just flat out impossible to. Thank you, NJ. I do try, but it was truly flat out impossible for me to get that Russian text into English in any way that made me even remotely happy. And it's such a big issue for being bilingual. And I'm assuming if you do speak two languages, right? Do you ever just have it that something creative comes out of you in a specific language that just doesn't feel right in the other one? As much as you try to like formulate it, as much as you try to like put it into words, it's the same words, it's just another language, and you can convey nuance in it just as well, but it just doesn't work. And the thing that's truly the most frustrating to me is that I know that I have greater mastery over English. I do know this, and yet I cannot for the life of me make these words come out in the same way to convey the same meaning that I wanted to in English, which is fascinating. They don't have the same, to me at least, to me personally, they don't have the same emotional context, or I can't convey the same emotional context in them. And I noticed that this doesn't just go for like creative literature and stuff. This goes for so many more things. Something as simple as good night feels, to me personally at least, so much more intimate when I say it in Russian. Saying I love you to somebody in Russian just feels heavier, and not like in a bad way, but just in a deeper sense. Like I openly tell my friends, my family, most people openly say love you in English, and it doesn't necessarily mean anything less than what I mean it in, like it doesn't. It still means that I love that person and I'm still conveying love for that person. But if I say it in Russian, it means so much more, but not in a way not in a way that invalidates me saying it in English. And I was curious if anyone else has the same, like feels the same way, especially if you have especially if you speak one language at home and a different one out in public, because I noticed that a lot of people like feel the same way about, especially about their like home language, is that their home language is more significant in some aspects, and it just feels different. Like I very rarely swear in Russian, like super rarely. Even though Russian has so many more swear words, so many more interesting ones. But but in English it could be I can easily swear every second word, and I won't even bat an eye. Won't notice it. I don't even notice it half the time as well. While what else? Saying things like good night in Russian just feels deeper. I again don't really know how to explain this. Don't really know if I'm actually conveying something that makes sense to anyone, but I really wanted to share this moment, especially because right about the whole entire um, Russian, like the text thing, and again, language is a form of national identity, and how I don't know, it feels odd, is what it really does, is that it feels odd. But in the same time, right, a lot of people, I found there's a very interesting thread on Twitter about um, reading in English versus reading in your native language, and how reading in English feels a lot more detached than reading in Russian. And I remember when I was a child, um, so in Russian culture, it's books and reading is really, really valued, and in not in the sense that English, like reading in English isn't valued, but in the sense that um, we were very much so expected to read the classics outside of school as well. For my dad, when I was 10, 11, 12, my dad told me that if I read the entirety of Jules Verne, he would allow me to use his computer without having to ask permission, which was a very big deal for me. Like I was super excited about being able to do that. And we had the entirety of Jules Verne, and he also bought me a number of the more popular texts. So 80 Days Around the World, 20 Leagues Under the Sea, and there's another one, also another popular one, of Jules Verne's texts, also in English. And I ended up not being able to finish any of them in English, even though I absolutely adore Jules Verne work. And oops, sorry, let's mute that. Where was I? I was talking about Jules Verne. And so part of that is that Russian just tends to be a much more descriptive language in its, or at least it feels to me that way, is that there's a lot more nuance, there's a lot more emotion behind it, rather than English feels so detached about everything. Maybe it's because it's the modern business language, but I don't know if anyone else feels this way, especially you bilingual people. If you're watching this afterwards, please put down in the comments or text me personally to share if you agree or not. And so yeah, it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating to me about the power of language, and how much more things mean to us in a native language. And to me, it's always been, I wouldn't say truly a fantasy of mine, but it's always been I've always been really, really close, or tried to be really close with any local Russian people that I could find, especially those my age. And it's odd because I both feel a little too different from them, given how well assimilated I am already into, the Western culture. but on the inverse about how alien I still feel in the Western setup, and how important it is to me to like retain my language skills and to retain um, and to like learn both the lexicon that is less formal and like I don't even know how to like word this right at this point, but yeah, so like really too long didn't listen is language is cool. I have a lot of difficulty with it, and the more I learn, like the more Russian I learn, the more difficult it becomes to verbalize in either language. um that's that. um Hopefully everyone has been, taking care of themselves, staying sane during this quarantine. I have very so the real reason why I'm cutting this lovely stream short, aka doing this only for 30 minutes, is because I spent the entirety of yesterday watching Kim Possible, and I ended up watching a full season and a half of Kim Possible yesterday because a friend of mine shared their Disney Plus with me, which bless up, but also I did not need that before my deadline on Monday. I really did not. But on the other hand, is that my right. But Kim Possible is good and great. I don't know which I will not be taking any shame from the Peanut Gallery about watching Kim Possible, because call me, beat me if you need to reach me. But where was I going with this? Right. So I ended up knitting and watching Kim Possible the entirety of the day straight yesterday. I think I started at like 9:30 and ended at 6:30 p.m. No, you're right, Kicker. You did not imply there was any shame in it. It's not shameful to spend a full day watching Kim Possible. It's called self-care, because we all wanted to. Every single girl wanted to be Kim Possible. Furthermore, if you were a girl if you were a girl who was into girls now, or who's now into girls, you absolutely had an obsession with Shigo, and I will not be taking any discourse on this. Like, Shigo was I absolutely loved everything Shigo stood for, and I ended up bi as hell. So right, it's fine. We're it's okay. It's fine. But so yeah, Kim Possible and knitting, and that's why. And actually, I ended up knitting most of this morning away as well. I am now more than halfway done with my top, which I'm very excited. I'm guarantee you it'll be done by next stream, so I'll be wearing it next stream and I can show it off. Hopefully, you all continue doing fun and creative things. Hopefully, you're all continuing to take care of yourselves, doing your work, doing, general positive things, reading books. Actually, a friend of mine, Elle, who I think is going to come online sooner or later, I don't know, maybe she will, maybe she won't, within the next minute or two that I will be continuing this, sent me a whole list of books to read, and I'm very excited. And so if you have any reading suggestions, preferably of fiction, because I have so much nonfiction to get through. It's a little too much nonfiction, not gonna lie. Once you've read one book about American imperialism, you've read all the books about American imperialism. I guarantee you of this. And so yeah, that's that. Oh, also, I'm sure I shared this on the last stream, but I ordered myself watercolors and a new notepad, and so I'm very excited because next week, hopefully sometime during this week after I submit my essay tomorrow, I will do some new art, which is going to be my first actual art. Right, British imperialism is a whole different story, and I'm not doing my degree on that. I'm not doing my dissertation on that, but I will, I will dig up some fun facts. I'll absolutely do an episode of British imperialism and my favorite or least favorite bits of like top 10 and bottom 10 things about British imperialism, if there are any top 10 things about British imperialism. But anyway, I will probably do some art over the next week. And so I will absolutely, you know what? I am being responsible to the people who watch my stream. Next week, I will in fact share some of my art, my own art, my own hopefully original watercolor art, and wish me luck because watercolor is not my strong suit. But also, I don't want to paint with anything else, and I don't want to actually like get acrylics and like mess around with acrylics. So watercolors it is. Also, watercolors are the easiest thing to do with pen and ink. And so I also ordered myself new micron pens, very excited. And yeah, and that'll be that. And hopefully that's going to be this upcoming week. And maybe I'll order myself more yarn. Who knows? Not I. Anyway, as I said, I'm going to cut this short because I do, in fact, need to get some work done on my essay. Hopefully you enjoyed this minor rant about language and the importance of language. And all of you have a lovely week. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe. Do what makes you happy. No one cares. I ate an 18-pack box of Jaffa cakes for lunch today, so nothing truly matters in this universe. Everyone has all of my love, all of my affection. Hopefully you please stay sane another week, and I'll see you all next week. Next week it's going to be with a cup of tea and probably with an actual full topic and a full hour of discussion of some interesting topic, which I will come up with later. And I hope you all have a lovely week.